today's guest, we have Jessica Crum, and Jessica has her own business, Silverlake Studios. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you.
I've got lots of questions for you, but
Okay.
to start out, of course, in our house, the word Jessica, it means a lot because my daughter's name is Jessica, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah. She's a freshman in Fayetteville. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. And when I hear marketing, when people say, "Oh, I have a marketing company,"
Mhm.
it's about like saying I'm a doctor, right? The
Oh,
first thing they
yeah.
want to go is, "What do you do?" So, what exactly does marketing mean in your business?
Okay. Marketing to us is all about telling the story of a brand who's doing some sort of good for the world, whether it's a social impact brand or an environmental impact brand. We love to help them build connections through creativity. So we focus a lot on content creation, design. If they don't have branding, we're working on branding. If they don't have a website, we're working on a website. If all of that's in place, then we're doing a lot of email and text marketing to help them stay connected to their client. And then we do a lot of campaign work, whether it's fundraising campaigns or
Mm.
brand awareness, PSA type campaigns. Those are the areas we like to swim in.
Okay, so when you were growing up, did you say, "You know what? I want to be a marketer when I get big"?
I don't know that that was a thing when I was growing up. I know I look young, but I grew up in the 90s, and I think marketing was probably a little bit more Mad Men vibes back then. And
Mm.
no, I did not. It was not even on my radar that I could be a marketer. I
So how
wanted
did
to,
you get here?
yeah. So I wanted to be an actress, but I grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and my parents said, "Honey, you need a backup plan." And so
An actress.
oh, yes. So I said, okay, well, what backup plans are there in Los Angeles? And it's a long story, but I met someone on a train in New York City, and she told me that she was going to fashion school. And that opened up a whole new world for me. Just meeting that one person, she would not know me from Adam. I probably wouldn't even recognize her on the street if she walked by. But she told me she was going to fashion school, and it changed my life. I started looking into that as an option, for myself. I learned to sew when I was a little girl, crochet, knit, all of the things you could do with fabrics or textiles. I've been doing them since I was little with my grandma. And so when I found out fashion design was an actual career that you could pursue, I thought, oh, that's what I'm doing. And of course, I told my parents that my backup plan was fashion design. And they were like, maybe you need another backup plan. But I just went for it. I applied for schools in Los Angeles, moved away at 16 years old, finished school. My degree is in product development for apparel. And so I went straight to work in that and worked for 7 years in the industry in LA. And probably that is where I learned marketing, because just
Mm.
designing a garment is not good enough when you're working for an independent line. You're doing a lot of sales and marketing. And so, and I love sales. I think it's so fun to figure out how to solve somebody's problem with your product, and how to find people who are a perfect match for what you're selling. So that's where I learned to do sales and marketing in that world.
So, all right. So LA, all right. You're no
Mhm.
longer in Arkansas. We're in LA, and so what was that like? How did that evolve into moving back to Arkansas?
Yeah, there was a lot of yelling. Like the whole industry, everybody's just always yelling. And probably some of it is like this mix of like Chinese, Korean, and Jewish culture just all in one place. It's just a lot of yelling. And so I kind of adapted to this chaotic environment and fell in love with it, really, because there's just always a problem to solve, and you get kind of addicted when you're a doer, to solving problems. And so if the pattern maker was yelling at me because the sketch I made needed to be edited for pattern making, I was solving that problem. And then, if the fabric vendor was yelling because they needed my order, ASAP yesterday or whatever, if JCPenney was calling, they weren't really yelling because they're from Texas, but they were like, we need 2 samples in 48 hours. It was just always a, hustle, hustle, hustle culture. And I got really honestly addicted to work. And I don't remember now what your question was, but that's what it was like.
Yeah. So from there, how did you end up back in Arkansas?
Well, honestly, that hustle culture, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, it really like sucked me in. And if you talk to anybody who's an entrepreneur, they've been there, where they get really drawn in. And there comes a time where you start having a family. I met my husband in Los Angeles. We got married. By the time I met him, I'd had a little girl. So I was a teen mom, which probably contributed to my hustle culture because I felt like I had something to prove. I had my
Mm,
daughter 17 and I was like, I'm not quitting school. I'm not quitting my career. I can do both. So by the time I got married, I had my daughter, and then my husband and I had a son. And then I remember one night driving home, and I was like, when I was a teenager, I was like, get me out of Arkansas. I didn't want
mm.
anything to do with the country music or the cowboy boots or the Southern accent. I'm telling you, I was like, get me out of here. But by the time I had my second child, I found myself driving home from work on my hour and 15-minute commute, listening to the country music station, just crying. I'm like, how did I get here? Why am I driving home at 8 p.m.? And, my husband's tucking my daughter into bed, and I won't see them until tomorrow morning. And I'll get about 10 minutes with them before it's time to go to school.
Ooh,
And,
yeah.
we all get to that point, I think, where we're like, okay, I can't have both. I thought I could have all of it. I thought I could have everything all at once, but it's really hard to do both. Um, and really both in terms of like a very demanding career, like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., nights, weekends. It's a high hustle environment. Specific,
Mhm.
not just in all fashion, because not everybody's like Devil Wears Prada vibes. It's really not. It's certain sectors. Like
Yeah.
men's fashion, that's slow as Christmas. Like there is no hustle going on there. But in juniors, like the teenager,
Mhm.
um, to young adult age realm, you've got to jump on trends and you've got to have it manufactured before,
Mm.
XYZ brand has it manufactured. So it's just very fast paced. And that was the sector that I fell into, is the junior and young contemporary market. Anyway, the way I got to Arkansas is my
Mm.
husband and I said, okay, this is not working. One of us has got to slow down. Yeah. And obviously it's me because he had really great work-life boundaries already. So I said, okay, well, let's just think about like what could we do? Could we like move out to Pasadena, and then I could like work part-time. And Pasadena's no like cheaper than Los Angeles. In fact, probably more. It's more expensive. So then we're like, okay, maybe we could move out to like Monrovia, like, reduce our expenses. We get all the way out to like San Bernardino. And it's like, okay, at this point,
Yeah.
what are we doing? We're really that desperate to stay within 3 hours range of Los Angeles. And so we did a lot of like praying about it and thinking about what is the long term here. And we had little kids and we
Mm.
needed help. And so my husband brings up Arkansas. And of course, at first I was like, don't even say it.
Yeah. Now where's he from
But
originally?
he's from Virginia. So I was like
Okay.
in shock. I was like, you don't even know what you're asking. You don't know what Arkansas is like.
Yeah.
And so we had been back to visit a couple of times, and he's like, Jess, I think you should consider it. You have so much family there. And at some point, just like broke down crying because I knew you're right. You're right. We have to say goodbye to this. It's been, for him, it had been 10 years. He'd been living in LA, 7 years for me. And, it's funny because after we left several of our friends did too, because you get to you just get to a place where you're like, either I'm going to stay here in the hustle culture and lose sight of what's really important to me, or I'm going to step away and and build a family and a life that I really love. So that's what we did. We moved to Arkansas. I think it was 11 years ago now, maybe almost 12. Yeah, 12 years ago, almost. And what's funny is I've fallen in love with the state in a way that I don't think I ever would have if we hadn't left.
Yeah, you have to step away to understand your appreciation for what there is.
Yeah, like any
So
teenager.
when you decided to move back, did
Mhm.
you had you already created your own business, or what was that like?
No, I thought when I moved back that I would just freelance, do some design work. I still had a lot of connections in LA that needed my help doing, freelance design work, whether it's a print for a shirt or embroidery design for a dress or whatever, little project here and there. And I had a newborn, and so I was like, okay, I'm just going to take some time off and freelance. And of course, when I got here, it was very hard to slow down. You get kind of like withdrawals from being busy, And so I was looking for other ways to be busy. And I started to volunteer with some nonprofits that were affiliated with the church we were attending. And and I think your next question is probably going to be like how Silverlake started. So there's a tie between that. Do you want me to keep going?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that's
So
where I was going.
volunteering for these nonprofits, they're like doing, homeless ministry, food security work, some environmental work, addiction, lots of really awesome services. But I picked up their brochure and it was designed in the 1980s. And I was like, this is not going to work, y'all. Can I redo this for you? And they were like, yeah. And, I had design background because you use a lot of the same software in fashion that you use in graphic design. So I started to kind of repair what I was seeing with the nonprofits I was volunteering with. And then, of course, that accidentally turned into me redesigning their branding. And then that accidentally turned into me redesigning their website. And so I kind of stumbled accidentally into marketing because I just couldn't see a problem go unsolved with these nonprofits who had so much good they were doing and so little brand awareness. So that's how it started. And then, nonprofits have boards, and the boards are own, a lot of local leaders, business owners who also need marketing. So Silverlake just organically grew from there.
It's organic, yeah. It's a lot of business owners, including myself, there's that, it's a moment. There's like a time that like, I am going to do this, right? So
Yeah.
we have all the confidence in the world that, oh, I got a plan, right? I'm going to start this thing out. But then there's that day that the switch happens, right?
Yeah.
That tomorrow is the day. So was it like that for you, or was it more of a slow transition? Did you
Yeah.
have that pivotal moment?
There was a time where I felt like, and I'm pretty spiritual, so a lot of the times are going to be like, it's me and God. What is He saying? There was a time when I was ready to get back into working, and I had a lot of freelance work, and it was really a question of, am I going to turn this into a business, or am I going to go and work for one of the very few brands in Arkansas that do apparel design, Dillard's, being one of them. Or I think Girl Scouts was hiring a designer, a graphic designer. And so I think I've been through like 3 interviews with Dillard's, and it was coming down to the job offer. And so that, just kind of like gets you really serious about, is this really what I want to do? And so I was praying about it, really reflecting on like, what is next? And I felt like I heard God say, if you don't do this, who will? And like, if you don't help the nonprofits and the small businesses, because in reality back then, I mean, that was, 11 years ago. there were not as many agencies, boutique agencies. No way. I mean, we had, the big guys in Little Rock and Northwest Arkansas, but very few small marketing companies. Now it's different, but then there was a big gap to fill for small businesses and nonprofits.
Yeah. So that moment that you're doing that, right? That you have to tell Dillard's, I'm not going any further with this. Talk about that. Was there like sleepless nights, or was there,
Yeah.
how, I know there was excitement, but there's also anxiety with
Yeah.
excitement.
Definitely a lot of anxiety, especially because it's just me. My husband, this is not a venture that like my husband and I went in together, on. It was very much and he's kind of hands off with me when it comes to our professional lives. He's like, it's your decision. So in some ways it was challenging because it was like it's yours to win or lose,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and it does, it has an effect on your family. There are a lot
Mhm.
of nights and weekends as a startup, and so there were definitely weeks, maybe even months, where we were not on good terms because the decisions I was making in business were compromising my availability to my family,
Mm.
even sometimes how much I was paying myself,
Yeah.
and I'm a big risk taker. Very early on, I wanted an office and employees and all the things that would make the men who are 20 years older than me actually take me seriously. And my husband would say, "You don't need that, like you don't need that
Yeah.
yet." And I'd say, "You don't understand what it's like being 25 out here trying to prove yourself,
Yeah.
um, and looking like you're 15." We definitely had a lot of quarrel going on in the
Yeah.
family because there were even some, I mean, no lie, probably our first year, 2 years, there were times when I'd say, "Hey, I need to borrow $1,000 to make payroll from our savings," and
Yeah.
oh, those were tough conversations because I don't want to be in that position. Obviously, I'm a
Yeah.
like to win, and I did not want to be caught losing in front of my husband.
Yes.
Um, but I think that a lot of that vulnerability taught me so much about what really is necessary, how to make the hard decisions.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, gosh, you just don't weigh
Yeah.
everything first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's borrowing from your savings is one thing, paying it back is a whole different ball game.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when it gets real. Yeah,
Mhm.
so you'd mentioned, being younger and being female, and
Mhm.
before we got on there, I warned you about rabbit holes. All right, so here
Yeah.
comes one.
Okay.
And I'm asking this because when you said that, I was reflecting on my wife. So my wife, she's a physician, and all of her partners are male.
Yeah.
And there is a mindset there. She doesn't play the victim very well. Good thing for her. But there's a mindset there when you're at the table with men
Yeah.
that I can't appreciate because I'm a man, right?
Right.
I've never been at a table full of women where we had to
Sure.
make decisions together. So talk
Yeah.
about that world when you're, as a business owner and you're living this life. What is that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. Okay. Um, well, number one, there's just always an underlying question of whether or not where someone stands. Are they someone who you need to go above and beyond to prove yourself to them, or are they someone who is going to treat you as an equal and respect you immediately? And you just sometimes you don't know going in, and so I think because I grew up with an entrepreneurial family, my grandfather was a business owner.
Mm.
I, instead of going in trying to prove myself, I always have gone into the room as if I earned my place there, and we're all equals. I don't care how long you've been in business. I don't care if you're,
Yeah.
a multimillionaire. You and I, we both eat and we both sleep and we both breathe the same air. And I think at the end of the day, what I always want our clients to know is that I want to join their team. I want to be on their team, and it's not, you know, it's really like I would like to sit on the bus and help you. And so just kind of always going into it with that mentality has helped me to, I think, earn the trust of a client, because that's what, I mean, as an employer now, I'm like, that's what I want more than anything, is someone to come and get on the bus who wants to be here and wants to help drive
Yeah.
us forward. I don't care how
Right.
old you are, or what your gender is, if you are interested in driving in the same direction. But the moments that were hard for me were in the room with other peers, like other marketing peers who, had been maybe in the industry for 5 or 10 years, who had been, doing a different type of marketing, maybe less content marketing and more, ads driven marketing. And they didn't take us, very seriously at
Mm.
all when I would. And I actually got to a place where I would start introducing us, instead of as a marketing agency, as a branding agency, because I didn't want them to challenge my authority in the marketing world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've outgrown that, but in the beginning I was embarrassed, or like I was afraid to say marketing, because I didn't want, to be challenged by the marketing gurus who would spout, acronyms at me.
Mm.
They, were a professor, and I was a
Mm.
kindergartner or something. But there was, I mean, there've been moments, I think
Yeah.
everyone has a story of when they felt degraded, and
Yeah.
you learn. I had someone ask, "Oh, you're the owner? Oh, wow."
Yeah.
Things like that, where they're just surprised. And you have people call your business like a little business. I had a client once who would call us his girls. Like, he would say, "My
Mm.
girls are coming from Conway," and I had to tell him, like, if we are your girls from Conway, but the agency, of male, the male dominated agency is an agency, then it's just, there's some underlying,
Yeah.
options made there. And so I was like, "Yeah, can you please call us, your marketing agency from Conway?"
Yes.
But I'm not afraid to have those conversations, and I feel like I'm an advocate for everybody else who's going to come after me.
Right. So you'd mentioned a moment ago, you talked about getting everybody in I don't think you used the word alignment. What I heard was alignment, having the people,
Mhm.
right people on the bus type thing. So,
Yes.
so as you've seen your business grow, and you're getting the staff on your team that aligns with what your purpose, what your vision, what your mission, all that stuff. What does that look like for you? How do you try to maintain that alignment with your team?
Yeah. Well, with the team, we are meeting every single week. We're going over values every week. We have a value of the week. Somebody gets the spotlight for being, for upholding a
Oh,
value.
that's great. Every week you talk about
Every
that.
week we've got a
Yeah.
spotlight on somebody. And then, of course, we're running on EOS, and so we are, meeting quarterly to set rocks and make sure we are very intentional about the direction we're headed. And then in terms of getting them on board with the client, I think that's probably the most challenging thing about growth. Now that I have 8 employees, and we're all, at any given time working on something for dozens of clients, making sure that they really are aligned with that client while they're working on their
Mhm.
work, that's been probably the biggest challenge, as we've grown, because they don't necessarily have face time with the client, so it's up
Yeah.
to me or the creative director to really pitch the vision of the client to them. And so we've started doing these little trailers, like client trailers, where I'll basically tell a 2-minute story about who this client is, who's our contact person there. And I actually let Mark watch his trailer, and he like made fun of me a little bit because
Mark Fortune?
yes,
Okay.
he he watched my internal trailer for Native State. I was I let him in on it, and towards the end, I think I said something like, you got to keep the creatives engaged. So I told them, when we're working for Native State, we're basically the Lorax, and we get to speak for the trees because Native State is, saving trees, right?
That's
And
good. That's
yeah,
creative.
I mean, you try and keep everybody excited about your clients, because if
Yeah.
everybody's not excited about the client, then it gets pretty, it feels like you're trudging through mud.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that engagement where so now you know you've got 12 years of experience, you've got a team built out. Now we're looking at the future, right?
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, we know when I first started my business, it was a very owner dependent business.
Mhm.
Everything evolved around me, right?
Yeah.
All roads led to Alan kind of thing. And I call it the Hey Allens, Hey Alan, everybody had a Hey
Yeah.
Alan, can you. And so and when once you recognize it, it's one thing to recognize it. It's another thing to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
So as you're going forward with your team and with your clients, and
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, you're like, I've got family and I've got my faith and
Mhm.
I've got my all these things that I want to be involved with.
Yep.
And and I always use the word shackled because I felt shackled at times.
Yeah.
And we all fight that battle different
Mhm.
ways, but we fight it. So how, as you look to the future, the not necessarily 3 or 5 or even 10, but somewhere in the future, that vision of what you want to be and what you want your business to be, or maybe you too, but
Yeah.
what that looks like. How do you help bring that back to your team so that everybody travels down that path with you?
Yeah. So we've gotten really intentional the past year about niching into an industry that we all love and that we feel like needs a special attention when it comes to content marketing. And that is the social and environmental impact um, brand realm. So whether it's a nonprofit or an environmental company like Native State, we just really thrive in that space.
Yeah.
It's a space where branding is really important, and storytelling is really important, and those are things that are kind of our bread and butter. So um, really helping the team see where we win and see that we're driving towards that, and we're trimming the fat, and and letting things go that don't align with that, has helped build trust. Like when they see me come back and say, we have moved away from working with this client and we're building, a strong relationship with this client, they start to believe me when I say we're not just going to take anything that comes our way. We're going to be intentional.
Mhm.
But man, in terms of like getting things off of my plate and not being, an agency that's dependent on the owner, that is so hard. And I think the past probably past 6 to 9 months since we started doing EOS, I've learned that simplifying and delegation are my
Mm.
best friends, and I'm
Yes.
always looking for a way to
Yeah.
simplify and to delegate. And now, I mean, I've let go of the finance side. Of course, um, I'm still checking P&Ls and owning the business plan and all the things, but um, AR, AP, payroll,
Yeah.
all of the things that once were on my plate are completely off my plate now.
Yeah. It's great.
And oh, it just makes you, when you get to that point, you're like, I cannot believe I ever did that. Like, how did the business stay afloat? Um, and
Yeah.
I hired a fractional COO because I know one of my weaknesses is in sticking to a process. I'm an
Mhm.
idea person. I want to reinvent the wheel like every day. And if something breaks, I want to literally take it all the way apart and rebuild it, not just, go back to the process, back to the process. So
Right.
I hired a fractional COO to help me, um, lead the team in that way.
Mhm. Well, I think we lost you. Hang on. I think we. You still there?
You paused for a minute.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I lost you there for a minute.
Okay,
You said we hired a fractional COO, and that's where we lost you.
Yeah, so I learned that my strength really is in ideating, building big relationships, maintaining big relationships, marketing, sales, all that. But
Yeah.
I suck at following a process, and so I want to rebuild the process every time it breaks.
Yeah.
And so I hired a fractional COO, and she's been able to lead the team and hold them accountable to the existing processes, keep them
Mm.
simple, even trim away some fat from the processes that are time wasters, find efficiencies. Like she's really helped me to feel, less alone in that area and kind of, it honestly probably has made the team feel like, thank God, because I have a feeling they were afraid to bring me problems, but for fear of
Yeah.
completely reinventing the process.
Yeah. So, all right. So I know we've been on here for a while. We need to wrap it up, but
Okay.
this is what I heard. I do not tell my wife how well I listen, but I heard a journey of someone that had a dream, but you never lost sight of the dream, and you were constantly resourceful throughout your whole path, right? So resourceful in where your strengths lie, using the resources that you have in order to move on to the next phase. And even with the hiring the COO, that's being resourceful,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. And yeah, I've had other CEOs call me and say, like, hey, I saw that you hired someone fractional. I saw that you hired a part-time person. And that's what I've been preaching to people is if you're a small business and you don't have the salary for a full-timer, just put it out there. You never know how many stay-at-home moms are like high capacity, high caliber, but don't want to work full-time or, you know, whatever the situation may be. You just never know.
yeah, yeah. So as you look to the future, as you're going down this path, if knowing what you know now, if you had to start, if we've got an entrepreneur listen to this podcast that is on that verge of I want to do my own thing,
Um,
what would you whisper in their ear that you
mm,
learned that you're like, if I'd have known that 15 years ago?
yeah. Oh my gosh. I'd probably tell them to simplify their pricing and their product offering and be really committed to it. Try not to just take any rogue, work that comes along, unless you're just really hurting for it. And then, oh man, I would say they do need a consultant of some kind. I know consulting feels expensive, but I got consultants involved in my business a couple of years ago, and I was already 8 years in. And what I started learning, I wish I had learned earlier on. I wish I had a consultant who had experience in my industry, and could honestly tell me the hard things I needed to hear very early. That weren't my husband. You don't want to. You don't. In fact, it
Yeah.
probably took me longer to learn it because he said it.
We need that support, that the close personal spouse. We need their support. We just don't necessarily need their input, right?
We don't want their consulting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not everyone's a rebel like I am, but yeah, I think getting an industry relevant consultant involved in your business early on is worth every penny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast and share your story with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having
So,
me.
so if anybody that's listening, they want to find, what's the best way to find your business or to find you?
So I like to say if you want to work with Silverlake, the first step is a coffee date with me.
Okay.
And you can book that at silverlakestudio.com. And you can see all of our branding and